an active dialogue in Israel, and is it enough? Is that dialogue enough to sustain Israel going forward?
No, not really. I think that let's say the Israeli version of Tikkun Olam is Tikkun Medinat Israel. It's really focused on the state of Israel. You do have, there's Israel Aid. There are these groups. They're very small. There is this social protest ferment in Israel, but it's really focused on Israeli society, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we have so much to deal with internally that we do need to look at ourselves. But I would add a third component in that mix, which is we're beginning to see the first stirrings of indigenous forms of Israeli Judaism. And the old dichotomy of secular versus Orthodox, which was never true in Israel. It did not include a majority of Jews from Arab countries, for example, who were traditional without being fully observant, and were certainly not secular. But today we're beginning to see young Israelis create intentional Jewish communities that are not Orthodox, and they're not Reform and they're not conservative. They have no name. It's a movement without a name so far. And this to me is very exciting because it means that for the first time we're starting to take responsibility for what would Judaism look like in a sovereign Jewish state, where we have the self-confidence of the majority, where we're responsible for the public space. We're seeing something very significant happening in Israeli music, popular music. Israeli music, Hebrew music, Old Zionist music, was in the past the carrier of the secular Zionist ethos. Today, Israeli music is increasingly the carrier of the re-Judaization of Israeli culture. And it's a fantastic, the Israeli music that's coming out is the most interesting Jewish music that's happening anywhere. And it's Jewish music that doesn't only belong to Israelis. The old Israeli music only belonged to Israelis. And the message of that old music was, this is not for diaspora Jews. This is music for the new Hebrew.
For pioneers.
For pioneers and for secular, the new secular Israeli. The Israeli music that's being created now is Jewish music. And that is really where I see not only the future of the next vision of Israel, which is what is Judaism going to look like in Israel, but an opening for redefining the partnership between American Jewry and Israel in ways that we haven't even begun to explore.
Yossi, before I hand the mic over to Rick, I'm going to just say one more sentence, which is you just jumping off on the beautiful statement that you just made. I have two children, as you know, who made Aliyah, and I asked them why they are doing this. My son Jonah, before he left to become a soldier, a lone soldier in Israel, said, I'm going to Israel to be a liberal Zionist because Israel needs liberal Zionists. And I asked my daughter, why is she staying in Jerusalem right now instead of coming back to do Plan A, which was an MBA? And she said, because I feel like I'm part of this new wave of young Zionism in Jerusalem, and I want to be a part of it.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
We all appreciate